with 550.
Yep.
Yep. Morning. What?
Everything's good, makes sense so far.
Say that again?
Everything's good and makes sense so far. I'll be right
Yeah,
there.
so this is just running and then I
Yep.
click.
When you're ready to start, hit escape
Hit escape.
and then
Okay.
click.
Okay.
But you only have to do escape once.
Okay.
If you have any issues, I'll be right there.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks so much. Is Alex here today?
Yeah, Alex is in the back.
He is
So
here.
we're
Okay.
set up, yeah. So we're already streaming. So you're live whenever you're ready to go. Okay.
So for the channel sliding, we're just gonna use what's on there.
Just use what's there.
I got the light up there, so.
So basically, I'm just going to hit escape.
I guess, yeah.
Hit escape, and then you're on. Much better crowd than I expected.
Yeah, well, they were scared, yeah, we kind of scaring them away with our. Oh, man. You're doing the meditation, right? I am, okay, yeah, I'm doing it, okay. I've got it.
There we go.
Welcome. Would you turn to 550 in the back of the hymnals to a reading, and I'd like to have you respond where you see the italics. And would you please stand? It's we belong to the earth. It's in the back of the hymnal. We belong to the earth. This we know. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. All things are connected. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Thank you. You may be seated.
Lighting the channels.
And then let's put the words up. Up. There we go. Would you read the words with me? As we light this chalice, may we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
It's me now.
Go ahead.
So again, welcome to the Unitarian Church of Hinsdale. We especially welcome those of you who are visiting us for the first or second time. And we understand that we also have some longtime members who have come back to visit us today, and we certainly appreciate that. Thanks for coming out on Memorial Day weekend. My name is Jonathan Hand, and my valued partner in this service is Ron Solberg. Our music this morning is provided by Jamie Passman, who has surprised us by coming back sooner. Thank you so much, Jamie. Our hospitality team is led by Mary Getty, and our tech team, we are so grateful to Alex Dvorak and Jean Schaefer. We do not have childcare today, but we do welcome children to stay with us for the service. This is a place where we celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of all human beings. Unfortunately, during the first few months of 2022, it feels as if human dignity has been under attack from every direction. Although we want this service to emphasize climate change, and we will tell you why, we certainly cannot ignore the events of the past couple of weeks. We can imagine that some of you, especially those with children and grandchildren, have a good deal on your minds. That's why we'd like to offer this morning an extended period of candle lighting, perhaps 10 to 15 minutes. And during this time, we invite you not only to say what is on your mind, but to invite others to respond, if you wish, to create something of a dialogue. Let's begin with our opening hymn, number 38, Morning Has Broken. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the springing fresh from the world. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first who fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completion with God's noon. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
I'd like to again welcome you and encourage you to participate in so many of the wonderful events that we have occurring in this church. And I point to the Monday evening Buddhist meditation led by Lenny Edgen. And then on Tuesday, the wise elders meet at 3 o'clock, and Tracy Olson leads that. And whether you're elder or wise, you're invited to attend. And we share our memories, and of course, because so many of us are of advanced age, we have a lot of memories to share, but it's interesting how many of these memories come together, and we elaborate them, and it becomes our topic for the day. And then David Lloyd is leading the Green Sanctuary meeting on Wednesday at 7:30. and a breakfast group on Thursday at 8:30. And then to remind you that next Sunday is the flower communion. So go out in your gardens or your neighbor's garden and pluck a few flowers for us that we can share here during the service. And by the way, we made extra copies of news and notes. They're in the back desk there for you to take if you didn't see it online. For meditation this morning, oh, by the way, I wanted to add, and Jonathan mentioned it, we have two visitors from the past, Melinda and Dan Perrin. Where are you, Melinda and Dan Perrin? There you are. So many memories. Thank you for joining us. The meditation this moment, just take a moment, feet on the floor, a little silence. As we meditate through this quiet moment, let us breathe in the worship of the ages and the music of history. Let us prepare our hearts and minds to receive the past as we look to the future. Let us share in silence for a few moments.
As we said earlier, we would like to offer an extended period of candle lighting this morning. I imagine that many of you have considerable thoughts about the events of the past week.
Good morning, I'm Tony. The words spoken already today have given me a lot to reflect upon. It is Memorial Day weekend where we honor our fallen citizens who served. And I wonder what they would think about some of the things that are going on today. My father was a Korean War veteran. I'm sure a lot of us, and especially the wise elders, might probably have direct memories of World War II vets and so on. I just wonder what they would think. But I'm a veteran myself, but I had a wonderful day yesterday. I was went by my father's grave and stuck a flag in the ground, and just a beautiful moment.
Hi, my name is Mike Pabian. I lit 2 candles here today. The first is for the Hayes family at this time of melancholy time of horrific loss, but also incredible joy. My second candle, I say this ironically this Memorial Day, but is in tribute to all those who have given their lives to preserve our right to own guns in this country. A very ironic Memorial Day wish.
Want to light it for me? This candle is for all the kids and their future. Today is a due date for my granddaughter. She's expecting a little boy. And I can't tell you how much we worry about this child's future and other kids and what they have to live through. It's been a horrific week, and we're all thinking about what we can do to change this, and it's very difficult. So we can just work on it.
We light a final candle for all of those joys and concerns that remain unexpressed this morning. Thank you.
How wonderful to be in this space this morning. Last night I finished a marvelous book, Among Lesser Gods. And the theme is, out of tragedy can come good, and we don't know what the good is without history and perspective. This morning, I discovered something I wrote 8 years ago. And it said that out of World War II, as horrific as it was, and all the destruction and all the loss, we got NATO and the UN. And it's only now that we're starting to see the wisdom of that and the good that can come. Recently, I learned that right before Hiroshima, my dad had gotten his orders to go to the Pacific Theater. He was a naval aviator. And the ending of the war meant that he didn't go, and that perhaps that's why I'm here. So we don't know, but we can always have hope.
Thank you, Melinda.
I light candle for Dan and Melinda. Toward to the matter of today, we breathe the life that we want to be. And Dan and Melinda's legacy here, and they're living and breathing what they wanted life to be, the world to be, very endures 20 years after their move away. Dan is the leading light of why the acoustic renaissance is anchored in this location, and it endures. It is almost weekly with, now they're using this facility for folk stage. And Melinda, among many things, the starter of the probably one of the most accomplished UU fellowships in the country, the Prairie Earth UU Fellowship. Its influence continues in everything earthbound that we do in this place. There are, in the honoring of Native peoples, filling this room with smudge, the ceremonial welcome to Native peoples, drums. I've seen this room just packed. People come across the country, Native peoples, through the farmland, remarking on it is industrial land and making us aware of really the impact we have. So really, we breathe the life we want it to be. And that's what we need to do at this time. And we have great examples in what Dan and Melinda did for us.
Thank you, Charlie. Now, the offertory. Freely, we have received the gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church, and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. The offertory will now be given and received with gratitude.
I would like to begin this message on a lighter note by putting in a plug for the organization Hinsdale Toastmasters. If you're not familiar with Toastmasters, it's not about putting bread on the toaster. It's actually an international organization with a mission to help people get comfortable in front of an audience. And the reason I mention it here today is for the past year, Toastmasters has actually been meeting here at UCH on the first and third Tuesday evenings in Joshi Chapel. All are welcome, and if you decide you want to join, it's fun, inexpensive, and well worth the price. Earlier I mentioned the virtual assault that we've seen on human dignity. On Wednesday, for example, we learned that 100 desperate migrants had been crammed into a small boat. It capsized in the Mediterranean on the way to Italy. Only 24 people were rescued. Undoubtedly, they were sent back to the wretched conditions that they attempted to escape. 2 weeks ago, of course, we saw the mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, where an 18-year-old actually went hunting for black people to kill. And of course, just a few days ago in Uvalde, Texas, the ultimate human indignity. Part of what makes these events so tragic is that we are completely helpless to do much about them. One reason I'm stressing climate is because, however tragic it is to see the slaughter of children, the truth is that many more children and adults will die as a result of climate change than from bullets. The other reason is there are actually things that ordinary folks like us can do to slow it down. So why have I titled the message The Three Faces of Venus? It's because in Venus, we see everything. The surface of the planet Venus is very, very hot. The reason? Its atmosphere is composed almost entirely of greenhouse gases. It is so hot that if somehow I could stand on the surface of Venus, reach into my pocket, and pull out a chunk of lead, it would melt right in my hands. In fact, my hands would be incinerated, and my days of playing the piano would quickly be over. This hot planet is named for the Roman goddess of romantic love. In this case, she is the same Venus who has seduced us into taking the easy way out, into using second-rate sources of energy like coal and oil to power infrastructure and nourish our bodies. The second and third phases of Venus actually come from a misunderstanding. Venus appears in the eastern sky at sunrise and the western sky at dusk, and because it is so bright, second only to the moon in its luminosity, the ancients thought that it was actually two separate stars. They actually named the morning star Lucifer. And today, Lucifer represents all the irresponsible actions that humans have taken against our own planet Earth. They named the evening star Vesper, who represents the hope that in spite of Lucifer, that we can make a difference in slowing the onset of climate disaster. I'd like to begin by highlighting some of the damage that Lucifer has already done right here in Illinois. While the Great Lakes don't exactly correlate to rising sea levels, Chicago is now in the same precarious position as Boston and New York. Heavier rainfall and ever more, on the other hand, frequent droughts are now causing massive swings in the water levels of Lake Michigan and the Chicago River. In the winter of 2020, the water level on Lake Michigan hit a record high, and intense rains just kept coming. Waves crashed over the museum campus and Lakeshore Drive, sending water up to the third floor of some buildings. The Chicago River began to overflow into downtown, into Lower Wacker Drive and the basements of the Sears Tower. Now, the balance between the Chicago River and the lake has always been delicate. If the river gets too high, as I just said, it floods the city. But if we try to mitigate the situation by releasing that filthy water into the lake, it affects the water supply for millions of people. In August of 1990, a very powerful storm, an F5 tornado. It carried wind speeds of 260 miles per hour, swept through Plainfield, less than 25 miles from Hinsdale. Now, I was going to say, how long will it be until a tornado reaches us? But those comments were eclipsed this week when we heard tornado sirens and warnings. Elmhurst and Villa Park and Lombard, DuPage County, for heaven's sakes, narrowly missed a tornado. In fact, a study released in April last year by the Nature Conservancy details how climate change is transforming our entire state of Illinois. By 2099, our average temperature may increase by 4 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot summer temperatures could bring extended droughts. Hundreds of people will die from heat-related illnesses. At the other extreme, there will be intense flooding. People will drown. Intense storms will stress the drainage systems of Illinois cities and towns, increasing our exposure to diseases and mold. As early as the 1990s in Elmhurst, the flooding from stormwater runoff into Salt Creek was so bad, the city spent $20 million to buy a quarry. $20 million to buy a quarry to use as a holding pond for that runoff water. An increase in mosquitoes and ticks will hasten the spread of West Nile virus and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. I do trust that none of the foregoing comes as any surprise to you. So what prompted me to compose this address this morning? Fundamentally, I want to change the conversation The way we talk about climate change today leads nowhere, and it is misleading, for it's mostly focused on carbon dioxide as released when automobiles burn gasoline. Yes, we all know that if the power source of every one of the 1.5 automobiles on the road today could somehow be switched from gasoline to electricity, we would slow the onset of the worst effects of climate change. However, we also know that this feat is 20 to 30 years down the road. Even if Tesla could manufacture 1 billion cars in the next 5 years, most people couldn't afford them. And second, as people travel a distance, we don't yet have the infrastructure to keep them charged. The current conversation leads nowhere because it rarely talks about pollutants other than carbon dioxide.
In this little break between parts of Jonathan's presentation, I'm honored to put out the name of Joseph Priestley. Joseph Priestley, as most of you probably recall, was the discoverer of oxygen, and which is so very appropriate when we're talking about greenhouse gases and the things that we're losing today. But what's really astounding is that Priestley was very instrumental in promoting Unitarianism in this country. Of course, he was a native of England, but he moved over to America, and actually he was kind of thrown out of England because of his beliefs, but he helped to promulgate Unitarianism in this country. This is a quote. "The mind of man can never be barren, wholly barren. Through our whole lives, we are subjective to successive impressions for either new ideas that are continually flowing in or traces of the old ones that are marked deeper. If therefore you be not inquiring or acquiring of good principles, be assured that you are acquiring the bad ones. If you be not forming virtuous habits, you are, how insensibly soever to yourselves, forming vicious ones."
Thank you, Ron. Yes, Priestley was a visionary. He was actually a contemporary of Thomas Jefferson. So the current conversation leads nowhere because it rarely talks about pollutants other than carbon dioxide. I will briefly describe 3 of these pollutants. The first is aerosols. These are tiny particles, essentially dirt, that result from the burning of fossil fuels, especially diesel. These aerosols are absorbed by our clouds. They're responsible for a phenomenon called global dimming. Has anyone here watched Nova? Perhaps you saw the episode entitled "Dimming the Sun." Because these are dirty, these clouds actually radiate a lot of heat back into space. They keep the Earth cooler than it otherwise would be. So think about it. One might say of global dimming that we are in serious, serious trouble because as we reduce the combustion of fossil fuels, there will be fewer aerosols for clouds to absorb, and hence global dimming will be reduced. Less of the sun's heat will be reflected back. In other words, to make up for the reduction of global dimming, we will have to reduce the burning of fossil fuels even more than we previously thought. Another aspect of aerosols and global dimming is that dirty clouds absorb more water vapor, and they hold it longer. Some scientists believe that during the 1980s, clouds that were supposed to bring rain to Central and Southern Africa instead blew entirely across the continent and dumped their water into the Indian Ocean. What a waste. So the question is, while we wait for all sorts of things, electric vehicles, more efficient heat pumps, a dramatic increase in electricity from renewable sources, what can we do in the meantime? Well, the third face of Venus, Vesper, shows how we can reduce the atmospheric buildup of pollutants other than carbon dioxide. Would anyone like to venture a guess as to which are the most potent of the greenhouse gases? Most of them are actually hydrocarbons. The worst of these hydrocarbons are man-made. They're called refrigerants because they are designed to absorb heat. Until recently, one of the most popular of these gases was Freon. As Freon expands, it absorbs a tremendous amount of heat, and that's what made it so effective in cooling systems. In fact, a single gram of Freon has the planet-warming effect of 8,000 grams of carbon dioxide. Let me say that another way. When Freon leaks out of our older refrigerators and air conditioners, pound for pound, it does 8,000 times the damage of CO2. And sadly, it also depletes our ozone layer, which leads to increases in skin cancer. Of course, Freon has been banned from new appliances, but it continues to leak from older refrigerators, car air conditioners, and home air conditioners. It does have descendants such as Puron, but these are still many times the potency of CO2. So I hope you can see that regular inspections of your refrigerating appliances can make a big difference. The other greenhouse gas that does tremendous damage is raw methane. That's the methane molecule up there. It's composed of 1 atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen. Methane also goes by the name natural gas. We pipe it into our homes for heat, for water, and cooking gas, but fortunately, we burn it, and it becomes carbon dioxide and water vapor. There's not much we can do about that carbon dioxide. However, there is something we can do about raw natural gas that leaks into the atmosphere. Over a 100-year period, methane released into the atmosphere does 25 times the damage of carbon dioxide. Why do I say methane released directly into the atmosphere? Because, unfortunately, a great deal of methane is never burned. Raw methane originates when organic matter decays in the absence of oxygen. In other words, any organic matter that's under pressure. Think of the organic matter that we put into our landfills: rotten food, garbage, diapers, unrecycled paper, cardboard, chips from trees. And of course, the worst of all, every fall, millions of tons upon millions of tons of dry leaves. As these things decay underground in the absence of oxygen, methane is released and creates enormous pressure inside landfills, and eventually it leaks to the surface. That's why when you look at a landfill, if you look at the top, you'll often see a pipe that sticks out of it. What should happen is that methane should be captured and combusted, but many times it simply finds its way into our atmosphere. The digestive system of every animal on the planet produces methane. All of us need to eat, but not everything we eat can be digested. As indigestible food makes its way into the intestines, there's very little oxygen. So what happens? It becomes methane. And just as in a landfill, it creates pressure within the digestive system, and it must find a way to escape. It typically comes out in bursts, and we all know what that's about. A huge source of digestive system methane comes from cows. The production of beef and cheese and milk and all dairy products is responsible for huge quantities of methane being leaked into our atmosphere. And what are cows fed? A few cows are allowed to graze on grass, which is relatively digestible. But today, most cows are fed corn. It's almost like they're in prison. The only thing they can do is eat corn. So what happens? You get a lot of methane. In cows, most of the methane is actually belched. Can you imagine standing in a stall and just belching all day long? The corn is designed to fatten them up, rather than being digestible. So allow me to interject here. In so many ways, we are truly a sick society. We have decimated the populations of tigers, elephants, polar bears, even our own cousins, the apes. And instead, we have populated the planet with more than 1 billion cows. 1 billion cows. Those cows collectively weigh more than the entire human population. New Zealand, in fact, has twice as many cows as people. And we process cows on an industrial scale. As we process cows, if you go to Mariano's and you purchase a pound of ground beef, you know what you're eating? You're eating the combined flesh of 100 different cows, maybe more. You go to McDonald's, you buy a hamburger. It's the same thing. You're eating scores of cows mixed together. Some of these cows will actually be calves. They'll be slaughtered at 20 months old. These are children. If you don't believe me, watch the Frontline episode called Modern Meat. Actually, there is a study that shows that animal agriculture is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than all forms of transportation combined. Worse than that, we are clearing the Amazon rainforest to make way for yet more cattle, and this is a double whammy. We cut down what we call the lungs of the planet, and then we bring in more cattle to produce more methane? Let us rise as we are able to sing hymn number 238, Wake Now My Senses.
And we'll do verses 1, 4, and 5.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe. Giving, receiving as giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Beauty and wisdom of time, suffer thy prayer and praise the sublime. So, what can we do about all this? Well, we could start by admitting, as Alcoholics Anonymous might say, that we have become powerless over our lifestyles. We must admit how much we love our beef, our butter, cheese, and ice cream. Admit that we love our cars and think nothing of driving 2 miles to the grocery store to purchase a single item, like a half gallon of milk. Admit that our farms have gone completely astray. Instead of planting more peppers, asparagus, tomatoes, we plant corn to feed our cows, all of whom produce raw methane. After admitting, we must ask for help. Well, Vesper has some suggestions. Number one, when October and November come, instead of raking your leaves and heading them towards a landfill, you could use a mower and just mulch them back into your yard. Over a short time, instead of becoming methane, they will decay into carbon dioxide. While you're at it, instead of throwing it out, compost your garbage. Just ask Pat Miller and Dennis Sedgwick. Compost can give a wonderful boost to flowers and gardens. Number two, as our animal ministry reminds us, we can reduce our consumption of products derived from the 1 billion cows on Earth. In fact, we humans have no inherent need for cow's milk any more than we do for camel milk. We can change our diets to include more fruits and vegetables, less cow, less pig. And by the way, I wrote down, this stuff is delicious. I'm not quite sure why I wrote that down, but on a regular basis, we can check our air conditioners and refrigerators for any leaks of refrigerants. Number four, like we have done here at UCH, when practical, consider installing solar panels. All of us know that we can purchase vehicles that get better gas mileage. When practical, we can purchase something that's a little smaller, hybrid, or maybe turbocharged. Yes, remember the three phases of Venus. Venus, Lucifer, and Vesper. Scorching heat, the damage that we humans inflict by releasing hydrocarbons into the atmosphere. But, on the other hand, hope. And finally, I say this a bit tongue-in-cheek, but not really. Let us be prepared for the strange and inconvenient things that are happening and will continue to happen. Don't freak out like it did this year when temperatures climbed to 91 degrees in early May. Don't freak out over power outages. There will be many. We will see a rush of strange insects and creepy crawlers. I will predict that within the next few years, and I've seen this with my own eyes in Georgia, one or more of us will arrive home, we'll walk into our kitchens, and we'll find a snake curled up somewhere. Maybe it'll be in our shoes, maybe on our kitchen table. You know, black snakes love to catch mice. Or maybe you'll find yourself in your backyard, seeing eye to eye with a Texas armadillo. Believe me, they're coming.
It's kind of ironic because I'm going to be concluding with a reading by Helen MacDonald from her book called Vesper Flights. Kind of interesting. That's the way that Jonathan is ending his presentation. And this is the quote: "There are actions we can take that seem impossible and pointless, yet they are entirely and precisely and absolutely required. We can exert pressure, we can speak up, we can march and cry and mourn and sing and hope and fight for the world, standing with others, even if we don't believe it. Even it can change and seems impossible, even if the change seems impossible. Even if we don't believe in miracles, they are there, and they are waiting for us to find them." Now, with some concluding thoughts from the renowned thinker and philosopher Stephen Colbert, Jamie will read three thoughts that Colbert has given that really address what we're talking about today.
Number one.
Can you hear him all right?
I don't want to talk into a mic because I'm just getting over it.
Okay.
If you really think the environment is less important than the economy, try holding your breath while you count your money. Two, have you ever had a conversation with a Christian conservative who tells you that you should believe in God just in case he is real? Why don't you say the same thing about climate change? piece for you called Icarus.
Well, does that encourage us to move forward, huh? Before we extinguish the flame, I'd like to say something about the auction that we had a week ago. Darren told me that that it generated $10,804. And what's amazing about that the goal was $4,500. So we thank the people who work behind the scenes, and there's so many, I would leave names out if I started to name them, but we thank them, and for those of you who attended and put forth your support. And this particular extinguishing of the chalice is so appropriate based on the results of the auction. John, you want to? We extinguish this flame,
but not
the truth, the warmth of this community, in the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all. Go in peace.